pod bay doors, please, Hal.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com, also ArmchairOscars.com. And seated across the country from me is the gentleman co-host, the legend, writer, and historian for TalkMovieMe.com, the one and only Mr. Doug Galloway. How the heck are you today, sir? No truer words are ever spoken. I thought your quote today was either going to be that or utter silence, because we are talking about a silent film. Welcome to February, the month of love. We are jumping right in with what has got to be the most sentimental film probably ever made. It is, of course, Charlie Chaplin's 1931 masterpiece called City Lights.
I love this movie.
Oh, I do too. This was the first Chaplin film I ever saw.
Oh.
And what an introduction. If you want to get introduced to his work, I mean, you couldn't start in a better place. Maybe this or The Gold Rush, but I saw this in 1989. Key Video did a series on the 100th anniversary of his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I got City Lights, and then Modern Times, and then, several of those, Gold Rush and all of that. But this was the one that grabbed hold of me because it was the one I saw first. And ask me on a good day, what is my favorite Chaplin film? This I juggle with Modern Times, but ask me what mood I'm in. Since it's February, since it's Valentine's Day, I love this film.
Yeah, I think I saw Modern Times first, but and I'm the same way. I'll juggle between this Modern Times or the Gold Rush. Um, this was actually technically my son's first movie. Uh, it was on TCM. I had TCM on in the hospital. I think it was the day he was born, and I was holding him, and it was like 8 o'clock at night, and I was watching this with him. So day one, he was watching Chaplin.
Yeah, day one.
Literally from day one. I was
Sentimentality never stops. Like I say, I flip-flop back and forth between this and Modern Times only because this one wants to go for the sentimentality. Modern Times wants to go for the social commentary, although City Lights does have a lot of social commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Modern Times is more or less a protest against a world that is moving too fast.
Mm-hmm.
This is in a smaller way, a protest against what he felt was a technological intrusion on an art form. Chaplin had predicted that talking pictures would die out in 3 years. Well, here we are 3 years later, 3 years after the induction of sound, 3 years after the jazz singer, and talking pictures aren't going anywhere.
No.
And
Silent pictures have fallen long by the wayside, even uh, in Europe and everything. I think Chaplin and Ozu were the hardest holdouts.
right. Well, Chaplin's last silent film was in 1936. So I
Hmm.
mean, you consider the jazz singer came along in 1927. Basically, put silent films on life support.
Yeah.
And anything that was being produced that was a silent by the time the jazz singer came out, in some cases were actually refitted for sound,
Hmm.
whether they had it or not. Sometimes the results were really terrible. But he spent 6 years trying to get this film made, and
Yeah,
it
he
may
started
be one.
shooting it, didn't he? Didn't he do pre-production in 27?
He did, he did, and didn't he? It was kind of like he Hollywood kind of uh, how do I say this? Hollywood basically punished him for this
Hmm.
because when the Academy Awards came around in 1931,
It got
the Academy Awards
nothing.
came around. This was nominated for nothing, despite the fact that it was the best-selling movie of the year.
And probably the greatest accomplishment in film of the year.
Right, right, because 1931 was not a very good year for movies. But
What
he
what won Best Picture that year? Was it
Cimarron.
Cimarron? Ugh. I hate that movie.
That movie's a cow patty. I
I
mean,
hate that movie so much.
I'd rather watch Rocky Four again, honestly, um, because at least there are colors and things moving around.
Oh.
Um, but this, the funny thing about this one is that it's not. Um, it's a silent film made outside of the era of silent films, but it never feels dated.
See, that's the wonderful thing about this is yeah, you see 1931, and if you're a student of film history, that's late for a silent movie, like we were saying. But it doesn't feel out of step, out of place. If
No,
more people had tried to do things like this, like if Murnau had held on and made another silent movie or two, there might have been some breath revived into it. If King
mm-hmm.
Vidor had, they might have been able to have like a subsect of silent films that continued on until the dubbing got a little bit better in the mid 30s.
Well, the misconception was that a silent film was broken in some way, and that's not true. It's the idea was that the silent film was basically um, only silent because sound was not available.
Right.
But they
And
had turned it into an art form.
hmm
Pantomime was an art form that long predated movies.
sure.
So it was, and a lot of people didn't see it that way.
hmm
They saw that talking pictures were the way of the future. You know,
It's the way of the future. The way of the future. It's the way of the future. Sorry, aviator bit.
and that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's a misconception.
It's I don't personally care if and most people aren't like this. People in our line tend to be, but uh, if it's silent or talky English or in some other language that I don't speak, I don't care. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie. I don't really like. I loved The Artist, and that started getting a lot of cineast hate after
Yeah,
it
it
came
started
out.
getting some retroactive kind of hatred.
Right. but because there was a Spanish silent film that was getting no uh, uh, press that was out at the same time. Beyonce Claves, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, here's the thing: most modern filmmakers, most really modern film artists, would like to work in other mediums like silent films.
hmm
Most film artists today would like to work in black and white.
hmm I think it was Alexander Payne. They did like a Best Director roundtable for the 2011 nominees, and Alexander Payne was up for The Descendants,
Mm-hmm.
and he
It's a good
he
movie.
said he said to Michel Hazanavicius that he was very angry at him and he hated him only because he wanted to make a silent movie and couldn't get it done. he well, he didn't think of it first because Alexander Payne is a huge silent film fan. Uh,
And
yeah.
I think it was Francis Ford Coppola that said we've only explored about 12%. By this point, only explored about 12% of what movies can do, and 7% of that was in the silent era.
Mm,
And so it's always the financial, it's always the money. It's art and commerce are squabbling siblings. They will
hmm
always, one has the brains and the other has the muscle. The muscle will always win. So it's always that's always pressing down on the art.
yeah.
And most people won't go see a silent film.
Yeah.
Most normal audiences. Now, people like us, we will.
Yes.
But I've actually seen one of Chaplin's films in the theater. I saw
Oh wow.
The Gold Rush with an audience. And
The silent or the 1942 sound
oh
redub?
god, the silent, not that. Oh, why did Chaplin do that?
The only because at the time, well, for a long time, he said that he wanted to be remembered for the gold rush. Later on, uh, he and family members confirmed that City Lights was his favorite of his films.
And
Um,
justifiably so.
yeah, but he wanted the gold rush to get a new life in the 40s. And when I first saw the gold rush, I saw it on video with that Centennial collection, the black with
Mm-hmm.
the different colored stripes up on top.
Yeah.
And the only version available was the 42 sound dub.
Ugh.
And it wasn't
Which
until
he did.
which he
Ugh.
did. He wrote, he took out the intertitles, he narrated. Um, it wasn't until I bought the Criterion Blu-ray that has both that I was finally able to see the full silent version of the Gold Rush.
I'm gonna tell you the truth. I don't like title cards. I can do without title cards because if I'm watching a silent film, it's telling me enough. I don't need maybe just the interstitials, to tell me, establishing where I am. But I don't need those dialogue cards. One of the best films is one of my favorite silent films is The Last Laugh
hmm
with Emil Jannings as a doorman who's basically put out of his job after 50 years. That film is done all in pantomime with no
Right there,
titles.
that's the only one that I can think of that doesn't have any intertitles at all.
I think it has one, and it's one word, but still,
Right.
even still, it. I just need the images. I don't need the words.
Most of the better the movie, the better the silent film, the less intercards you need.
Right.
Um, I remember I was reading something about Hitchcock. He started as an intertitle writer, and
Mm-hmm.
he would write as little as possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the benefit of the picture, and sometimes not.
At the first Academy Awards in 1928, there was actually an Oscar given to someone for title writing,
hmm
for title card writing.
Yeah.
They quickly got rid of that. But let's talk about City Lights. And so the commentary at the very beginning, which you wonderfully alluded to
Yes.
in the introduction, is that we open on this political speech.
This
They're unveiling a statue, and when they speak with this sort of kazoo sound, these squawks that come out
and
of their
it
mouths.
was Chaplin all on all of them in a kazoo.
Yeah. So you hear
And
so,
it was to imply the emptiness of the speech and the irrelevance of speech in a film.
but still you can understand when one of them stands up. You can understand what he said. He's just saying thank you. It's not necessary. But they unveil this statue
The Little Tramp's best entrance.
called Peace and Prosperity, and it's this weird sort of um, gross kind of Greco-Roman statue, and he's asleep on the lap of one of the statues.
And they unveil it, and there he is curled up in the lap. And he gets up. He realizes that people can see him. He tries to get down, and the sword from the one impales his pants.
Yeah,
And he can't get.
yeah. Then they
And
start playing Star Spangled Banner, and he's trying to stand at attention.
and then there was the other. He sits down in the hand of of a woman on the other side. He's trying. He stands up, and
Oh, he
it's
sits on the face
literally
at one point.
thumbing his nose at.
It's just sort of this commentary of how useless all of this pomp and circumstance is. It's just it's unnecessary. It's
It's
like,
so funny.
but it's so funny. And the funny thing is, that's a set piece at the very beginning. That has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It's just this wonderful, kind of like Indiana Jones in the cave at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just fun on its own. It doesn't have anything to
It's
do
to
with the
get the
rest.
tramp into the movie without him just kind of swinging his cane and walking onto frame.
Yeah, because in the Gold Rush, he just walks around a pass.
Yeah.
That's the first time you see him. But yeah, the funny thing about this movie, the commentary here, it's a topsy turvy world. The idea that most gentlemen in this movie, wealthy men in this movie, are sort of uncouth. And here you have this little man who is penniless, who's more of a gentleman than they are.
Hmm.
You have this strange idea of a millionaire who's going to kill himself, and yet the penniless man is the one who says you have to embrace life.
Yeah.
You know, he's the one who doesn't really have a lot to live for, and yet the wealthy man, the drunken man, is the one who's going to kill himself. That's a very odd kind of turnaround.
Hmm.
Um, the notion that in the framework of this film, not it's not really the center, but it's the framework, is that he meets this girl who's blind, and through a series of misunderstandings, she thinks he's wealthy because he's trying to get away from a police officer. He gets out of a car, and somebody closes the door, and she thinks it's a limousine.
Hmm. Well, I mean, she thinks he owns a car. Like, he gets out and she tries to sell a flower, and he's like, "Oh, me?" And he gives her what little money he has for the flower, and the person who actually owns the car comes up and gets in the car and closes the door, and she's like, "Oh, wait, your change." And he kind of looks like, "Well, I guess I'm not getting that." The
Yeah,
change, and he kind of creeps away, and he's already started to cultivate this I get image for himself for this girl, and he tries to help her. He gets her groceries, and you know,
Pays to rent,
yeah,
which is $22, by the way.
yeah. And if they don't get it by tomorrow, they're gonna take possession.
Yeah, it's just this girl and a grandmother.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but when you see dollar amounts in old movies, you're just like, oh, that was a lot of money to them.
Yeah, like it's something I was watching one time. It was like there's a street sign in the back, in the background, or this big sign in the background that says you can get a Coca-Cola, a hot dog, and something else for 5 cents. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's it's basically like a super value meal, but for five
yes,
cent for a
for five
nickel,
cents.
and not $10.
Yeah, that's a dollar menu. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, but what's interesting to me is here's a homeless man, and I assume that he lives down by the river. I assume he lives in that place where he finds the drunken millionaire, because you notice he's penniless, he's homeless, but he's not destitute, and it doesn't overshadow the fact that he still minds his manners. There's a moment when he goes down to the docks, and the guy's going to kill himself, and he goes to sit down, and he wipes off the seat
Right.
before he sits down. Um, he takes the flower that she gives him, and he puts it in his lapel. It's like he's always a gentleman. He's
Hmm.
never
And he's
um,
always tipping his hat, and
he's always tipping his hat. He never forgets who he is. We don't know much about this character um, in any film, really, and there's not an overriding arc to it either. The only overriding arc is at the end of Modern Times is the fact that he is now not alone.
hmm
Um, actually, I think he's not alone in any of these films, because in Modern Times he gets the girl, in this one he gets the girl, and in Gold Rush he gets the girl.
we can presume that he at least has some kind of relationship with the blind girl
Mhm.
by the end, because she it cuts it ends on just a close up of him being happy that she recognizes him,
Right.
and
Well,
there's
she loves him.
no hmm
She loves him. She
maybe
she loves him for what he's done for what he's done for her.
true, but and now they have a chance to actually get to know each other for real. Will that maintain, or will he just go off and be himself?
Yeah, this is very much a movie about sacrifice, about
Hmm.
the things this guy does for love. I mean, it's amazing. It's just like, the thing is, he wants to do things for her. He wants to. I mean, he goes into, for heaven's sakes, he goes into a boxing match where he's only going to get $50
No,
to help her
he's
out.
gonna get 25.
He's going to get 25. Yeah, but see, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's like when we're talking about in Rocky, when even the Rocky wins and he gets $45. And it's this series of mishaps, but it's all aiming at that trajectory. It's all aiming at this trajectory. He's fallen in love with this girl, and he wants to do something for her, and he wants to help her out. He wants to help her pay her rent. And then he finds out that there's this operation that can help her with restore her sight,
Hmm.
which in 1931 I can't even imagine. Um, I don't know how much money he had to get for the operation, but
Oh, but if you read the thing, it says that it's in Vienna. If you can get to them, operations are free for the poor. But if you're
oh
poor,
right,
how do you get to Vienna?
yeah. How do you prove that you're poor?
I
Here, put
mean,
on this coat I found in the alley.
yeah. I mean, if the little tramp showed up, they'd be like, okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah, we get it. but that's the framework of the film is that he's always trying to help this girl. Um, she's not given much of a character, but I do like the details. I like the idea that when she goes home, she has effectively surrounded herself by things that heighten her other senses.
Mm-hmm.
She has birds in a cage. She plays the phonograph. She's of course sells flowers. So she's surrounded herself with these things. It's interesting that she's not down in the dumps about her situation any more than he is.
Right, right. And all she does is sell flowers.
She sells flowers, but she's surrounded herself by things that can make her happy,
Mm-hmm.
um, just as he does.
Mm-hmm.
Now she has more better circumstances than he does because she lives with her grandmother, and she has a place to sleep. She has a place to go every night.
And she
But it's
has some sort of an income.
and she has an income, meager as it is. It's an income,
Mm-hmm.
and but the way she sells flowers to him later in the film, I don't know how she manages an income because there's a scene where she basically just gives him the whole lot. You know, you know when he leaves the drunken millionaire's house and
Yeah.
she just takes both of them and hands them to him. But what's interesting is it's juxtaposed by uh, this other relationship that he has, where he tries to save this millionaire from killing himself.
Right, and who treats the little tramp like his best friend when he's drunk,
Mm-hmm.
recognizes him every time he's drunk. As soon as he sobers up or gets a clear head, he has no recollection of the little
Right.
tramp at all, and he kicks him out. It's so heartbreaking. It's this deception that he has he has a mask to put on when he's sober, but when he's not, he's actually like a really nice guy.
He's a blackout drunk every time he gets drunk.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Bear
he
in mind
goes
that this
home.
is also during Prohibition.
Yeah, yeah. This is and during the Depression too.
Yeah.
So he tries to save this millionaire, who he's going to tie a rope around his neck and tie the other end of the rope around a giant rock,
And then throw it into the river.
and then throw it into the river. There's a wonderful scene where he tries to stop him from doing that. It ends up around the tramp's ankle,
No, around his neck.
and he ends up in the river.
Yeah. Like he gets behind the millionaire throws it on and then steps aside, but it's around the little tramp's neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ties it to the boulder and throws it, and it just yanks. He goes in after it, and they keep getting pulled in one after the other into the river.
His body language in this is amazing because he's like a marionette.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whenever he walks, whenever he moves, whenever he's jerked into the water, there's this brilliant pantomime that goes on, and it's hard not to think that every single movement, every single action that went into this, that went into his performance. I'm sorry it didn't get nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor. It should have been,
Mm-hmm.
because this is a full physical performance. Whenever he moves, you can tell every nuance of his performance is in his body language, and it's all played for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like later on, when he's in that boxing ring,
They
there's a
rehearsed. They rehearsed that boxing match for 11 days and shot for 6.
I would have said 11 weeks because that it's so beautifully
It
choreographed,
is.
and I don't know. I know that Chaplin was I know Chaplin was a control freak, And one of the reasons that he was able to get this made is because he was one of the founders of UA.
Yeah.
But you consider Chaplin is the star, the director, the producer, the writer, the composer of the music, and the editor.
At least on paper, yes, he is all of those things.
If you want the picture, the very picture of autonomy, it's a clip from this movie, you know. But still, it's just amazing his performance because it's all in that music hall tradition, the pantomime, and all of that. Just every motion that he makes, even when he tips his hat,
Hmm.
even when he picks up his cane, no matter what he's doing, it's always affected, but not in a bad way.
Right.
It's like a cartoon almost,
Hmm.
and this could have been a series of cartoons, but it's an amazing.
Great. Now I want that. Thanks, Jerry.
Yes, but only hand drawn.
Right.
But it was also, we should talk about this. Um, one of the we talked about the value of silent film. Silent films were a way of at the time communicating with an audience that couldn't speak English.
Hmm.
You didn't have to translate it, and that is one of the reasons that that this little tramp and his little pantomime became one of the most famous images in the world.
Hmm.
The not just the sentimentality, but also the fact that he could, the fact that you didn't have to translate this. This could
Right.
come from anywhere.
And he was concerned with his bankability if there was talking in his pictures that it would lose the non English speaking fans if the
Mm-hmm.
tramp talked. And then how would you have him talk? Would you have him talk in an accent because then that regionalizes him? And then he was very concerned about that because the tramp was his. He understood that the tramp was his uh, lasting image. That was his.
Bread and butter.
Yeah, I mean, it was it was what has made him famous and what would keep him famous all these for the rest of time.
The
Really,
rest
I
of
think
time
he
itself.
yeah, I think he understood that he created an immortal character and he didn't want to see it dashed because of a miscalculated decision on one hand or another to give him a voice that made him from somewhere.
Yeah. Besides that, how would you? What voice would you give him? It just seems
Because if he spoke with his natural accent, he would
other
sound
than
too
his English,
posh. Yeah.
and it
So
would give
then,
him it would give him too much. The universality of the character is all in the body language. As I said, it's
right, he
all
was the
more.
original everyman.
He's the original everyman, and I've always said, and the three geniuses of silent comedy, Chaplin, Keaton, and Harold Lloyd.
Hmm.
Harold Lloyd is the white collar, Keaton is the blue collar, and Chaplin is the downtrodden,
I was gonna say the no collar.
the no collar. The downtrodden, the little man, the guy who just is down to nothing, but never lets that ruin his spirit.
Hmm.
Although in this film we can see that at one point it does.
By the end, he's just when he gets out of he goes to jail because he happened to be with the millionaire while his house was being robbed by others, and his concern for the guy who had just given him $1,000
Right.
for the girl.
And by the
Uh,
way, you can be sobered up just by getting knocked in the head.
right, you get a blackjack to the head, and that, you know, after you come to, that you're all good.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's kind of like in the film
a
noir,
helpful hint for the blackout drunk. Just get
yeah,
socked in the head with a blackjack.
it's kind of like in film noir when you can be sobered up by a jolt of black coffee.
Right. Some water on the face and a sip of black coffee, and you're good to go.
Well, he is when you get to the end of this film, he is his gentle spirit has been beaten out of him
Right.
because when he gets out of prison, he is even more bedraggled than he was before.
Right. His pant legs are ripped. He doesn't have a shirt. His vest is gone. He's just got his coat, his collar's turned up. He's hunched over, walking really slowly. Like he has lost his
He's still
optimism.
getting beaten up by newsboys,
Ugh, those newsboys.
and it's at that moment that he's rescued,
Mhm.
effectively rescued by his own good charity.
Mhm.
He gets down to the worst point, and he's rescued by his own good charity in the fact that he sees that the girl has had her sight restored,
And she has her own flower shop.
and she has her own flower shop, and she's doing fairly well.
Mhm.
She's got the flower shop with her grandmother, and she sees him. She doesn't know who he is. She was blind. She thought he was rich,
And she's trying
and
to give him a flower and 50 cents, and she touches his hand much in the same way that their hands were touching when he was giving her that $1,000 for the rent and for her eyes. And she's like, oh, it's you.
yeah,
And he's like, yeah,
because
it
she thought he
is.
was. Well, there's a moment earlier when a rich man walks into the shop,
Mm-hmm. He's like,
and
oh,
she
I'd like to
orders.
order some flowers. And
Yeah,
she thought it might be him.
but of course they realize who they are, and then the music that plays, the music swells, and they've fallen in love with each other for who they are. The masks are off. The whole thing just it reveals, and it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So many films that just prattle on about what love is, what love means. So many prattle on about this is a very simplistic, simple construction. It doesn't need a lot, um, but it's built. It's very very much earned because when you get down to this point, you realize the journey he's been on
Mm-hmm.
has all been to this moment. You know that the charity and goodwill that he has displayed and all the stuff that he's been through with the millionaire has all been not for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to this ending, and it is absolutely beautiful. Probably one of the best moments ever captured on film.
Yeah.
And I know that he spent weeks trying to figure out how to end this thing.
Mm-hmm.
This ending just it was just it was kind of pulling at him, trying to figure out how to get this, how to come down to this. But again, probably the greatest ending of any movie I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful, and it's you know when film started getting really seriously studied in the 60s and into the 70s, uh, Chaplin was often ridiculed for being too sentimental,
Mm-hmm.
um, as if that took away from his work. Um,
Yeah,
and people would say, well, Buster Keaton was funnier. And sometimes, yeah, but
I hate
I
those.
can't. I don't understand the people that like Keaton and don't like Chaplin, or like Chaplin and don't like Keaton. It's like,
Or try to compare the two.
yeah, they were very different styles. Um, I think Chaplin was a better filmmaker.
Hmm.
Uh, I think Keaton delivers more laughs because he wasn't concerned with the emotion.
They're both great storytellers,
Yeah.
or they're both great technical filmmakers. But I think Chaplin was a better storyteller
Hmm.
because if you consider this film and a movie like The General, which is my favorite Keaton film,
Mine too.
that film is brilliant on a technical level. There's not a lot of story there.
No.
His girlfriend is kidnapped and he tries to get her back. That's basically the story. Here, the story has a lot of layers, and there's a lot of avenues for it to travel. Um, it's interesting. It's a lot of set pieces, but they work beautifully together as a story,
Hmm. It's all very multifaceted and quite ahead of its time. Um,
which is ironic. Being this is 1931, it's a silent film.
right. Uh, but I think that the detractors from him, who have become fewer and fewer over time, um, began to realize that without what he did in uh, this specifically and in modern times, some of the best films, specifically some of the best dramas, would never have been made
Right.
because of how he set up the multifaceted storyline and the depth to more than just boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, boy and girl walk hand in hand down the street to a happy life, the end. Um, he introduced a level of life to it, which is weird because he was the anti-realist.
Mm-hmm.
He did not want to go for realism, and people were critics were going after him even when this came out. That people want realism, and this is not a realistic kind of depiction. But I think it gives, despite the fact that the people have no names, no one has a name.
No,
Um,
even Chaplin is called a tramp.
right, and but each character's motivation is clear, and on multiple levels, it's is he doing this because he thinks she's pretty? A little bit. Is he doing this because he's a genuinely good person and he found someone whom he has found the ability to help?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it love or is it kindness? Maybe it's both. Did she fall in love with him, or was she just overwhelmed with gratitude? Maybe a bit of both.
He doesn't think that if she finds out who he is, that maybe she won't love him.
Yeah.
That if she knows the truth about him,
Hmm.
that's a misguided that's a misguided notion. The fact that kindness should be its own reward.
Hmm.
In Chaplin's world, it is.
Hmm.
That kindness is a reward, and the idea that she would love him no matter what. That's the great revelation of the film.
Hmm.
But that misconception is that she won't love him if she doesn't think that he's wealthy. And he tries to keep her from thinking that he's just a tramp.
Hmm.
And when you get to the end of the movie, it transcends what they have and what they've been through and who they are and the things that they've done or the things that he's done transcend a lot of questions and you know uh, it transcends a lot of it's love in its purest form, I should say.
Right, because at the end, when he says, "Oh, you can see now," and she says, "Yes, I can see now." In a lot of ways, even just that is multi-layered. Um, yes, she can physically see now. She is no longer uh, blind, but it was that moment that she also finally saw that this person with nothing helped her get to where she was, and without this little man that literally had nothing to his name. He didn't even have a shirt after he got out of prison. Um, she would be she would still be on the side of the street selling flowers blind without the gentleness and the kindness of this person who could have taken that $1,000 and done very well for
So
himself. Yeah. At that time, $1,000, he would have been set for a very long time.
remember, a hot dog and a Coke, 5 cents.
5 cents. You can get a lot of 5 cent value meals for $1,000.
Right.
He wouldn't go hungry again. He would be able to get a place to live. He would, and he wouldn't really have to work that hard.
And it's also, if you think about it, the tramp himself is kind of a an overturning of this notion that if you're homeless or if you're poor or if you don't have all the money in the world, that you're worthless. It's an
Right.
overturning of that idea.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that a man who has nothing is still has his dignity, still has his manners about him.
He still has empathy and humanity. That he's not just hard scrabbling for himself.
Right.
He's willing to sacrifice not only what he has but what he could have just for another
Mm-hmm.
person.
He's a viable human being,
Mm-hmm.
a human being on you know a human. The thing about the tramp is that he's still a viable human being, even though he has no money. He does not
Right.
forget who he is. He does not forget his manners. He does not forget. Just because you're homeless and you don't have any money doesn't necessarily mean that you're some kind of lower savage.
Fascinatingly, he is the kind of person that everybody should be, and the world would be a better place if people with money were like him
Right.
because he doesn't care. He gets a job as a street cleaner so that he can make money to help the girl.
Hmm.
Not like if it weren't for this, he wouldn't get a job just for himself.
Right.
He is empathetic towards this girl, and so he wants to help her.
Hmm.
And
Just because he wants to help her, he's
right,
not looking for anything in particular.
right.
There's nothing in return that he has to have.
He is not like he's not pressuring her into doing anything. The commentary on the Criterion disc brought up a very good point. Um, that he goes to bed with the millionaire, but not with the girl.
Right.
And there's a lot of interesting sexual ambiguity.
There's a strange romance going on with that millionaire because there's some kissing going on. There's a lot of hugging going on. There's a lot of physical affection going on.
And there's that weird coquettish flirtation during the beginning of the before the boxing match that he's, I guess, trying to soften the guy up so that he goes easy on him. Like,
Hmm.
oh look, he's not a tough guy, so maybe I won't hurt him.
Oh, that's that boxing match. Let me tell you, that is pure Chaplin. That is pure tramp shenanigans because he is supposed to get into the ring with a guy who knows that he has the fix, that there's a fix going on, the thing is set up, that he will take a dive for the tramp so the tramp can get the money. The guy gets a note that the cops are on the way and they're looking for him. So he puts his pants on, grabs his hat, and he's gone.
Right, because he's the one that brought him in the first place. It's like, hey, do you want to make some easy money? We'll split it 50-50, regardless of who wins, whatever.
Right.
It's winner take all, but I'll give you half.
But then they bring this,
This guy just off the street,
yeah,
just like the tramp, and
yeah.
who has this powerful hook that somebody bumps into him and he doesn't even he barely even stands up and he knocks the guy out.
Basically, this is a bum fight,
Right.
and he goes in the ring. By the way, talk about a glass jaw. This guy starts to sway
Yeah.
the second time he's hit.
He,
He hits him twice, and the guy's almost already ready to fall down.
yeah. And like this boxing match is in a lot of ways a one up, a multi more than one up from the the fight in the kid when he keeps getting behind the guy and kicking him in the butt.
Yeah. What if he kicks this guy?
I love he just flies across the ring and tackles him.
And it's so beautifully choreographed because when the fight starts, he keeps staying behind the referee.
In perfect step, and then when the referee ducks, he punches, and then he's right back behind him.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Bugs Bunny did this. I think there was a cartoon, I think, where they actually did this,
It
where
probably
it's like
after,
they
because
stay
I know that
immediately.
the Warner Brothers cartoons used a lot of the Marx Brothers stuff from Duck Soup and
Yeah,
Horse Feathers uh, in their routines as well. Um, it's just it's
it's a marvelous film. It's a funny film. It's a heartfelt film. It's just there's nothing more I have to say about it.
yeah,
It's beautiful.
it's just a wonderful, and it's 86 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and you
It's an hour and 27 minutes.
you you laugh so much that you forget that nobody's saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I it had been quite a while since I'd seen this. Like I got
Yeah,
it
me
on the
too.
Criterion Blu-ray uh, right when it first came out, and I watched it not long after I bought it, and then it's been sitting on the shelf for probably a good 7 or 8 years. So
I'm not done with silent comedy because we've got another one coming up in a couple of weeks that I just got on the Criterion edition. That I just got in the Criterion edition. We're going to talk about that one in a few weeks, but another one of the great comedy geniuses. But the transfer on this one. Now I
oh,
watched this.
it's so nice.
I watched this at least 50 times on the VHS version.
Hmm.
The VHS version, of course, VHS the quality's always going to be a little bit lower.
VHS was VHS.
But you have seen it on video on VHS so many times, and then to arrive at this, this looks like somebody just took a, you know, just like took Windex to it and just cleaned it up.
Yeah.
I mean, this looks beautiful. I got
Yeah.
the Criterion off of Amazon just the other day, and this is the best. I've seen it now on VHS. I've seen it on DVD. I've seen it on
Hmm.
TCM. I've even seen it on Good Times Video.
Oh.
Um,
If you can say you've seen anything on Good Times Video through the crackle and the terrible print quality.
Let me tell you something. The idea of watching city lights on Good Times Video, it's like looking at the Mona Lisa like in Jugs magazine. It's just
Yeah.
it's kind of strange. It's like you can imagine. It's kind of strange. It's like it's washed out. It doesn't work. The music is just not right. It's
Nothing synced
terrible.
properly.
Nothing synced properly. I remember that version of the Metropolis that I got. It
Hmm.
looked like somebody had drug it up and down the driveway, and it's like it had no soundtrack at all.
Yeah.
None. No sound. No sound. No nothing. I was like, am I supposed to provide my own sound effects here? It was bad.
Yeah.
It was really, really freaking bad. But anyway,
But this is from a 4K restoration, and it's absolutely gorgeous. What recommendations do you have?
see City Lights on Criterion.
Hmm.
There's a wonderful documentary on it done by animator Peter Lord, who is, I mean, he's
Of Wallace and Gromit fame and
Wallace and Gromit fame of
Chicken
Oregon
Run.
Studios, who is absolutely in love with this film. And it's a half-hour documentary. He breaks this film apart, and just is really gives you a perspective on it that you didn't think about.
Hmm.
Now I haven't listened to the commentary yet. You have.
Yeah.
Some of the commentary, I understand some of it is by Chaplin.
No.
No, there's no. Okay, I thought there was some audio pieces in there from Chaplin, but
No, it's the commentary was by Chaplin biographer Jeffrey Vance.
okay, that was it. Okay, but and I hate those. I usually hate those commentaries. Like,
He's clearly reading, but there's some
yeah,
interesting stuff going on that
I
he
hate those
gives.
commentaries by experts
Yeah.
because they're just.
They can be very, very dry.
Oh my God, they can be dry. They're reading a script.
Hmm.
They're not clearly not interested in the films. Like, but the other side of that is like when I watched last week we talked about the setup, and when Scorsese was doing the commentary, you could tell he was watching the movie.
Yeah,
He
because he
wasn't
would
just
get distracted and he would just stop talking.
yeah.
Or if you ever
It's
try to
very
watch
rich.
the commentary from the original DVD of MASH,
Mhm.
it's just Robert Altman by himself without anyone to prompt him,
Mhm.
and it's basically watching the movie, and you forget every once in a while Altman would come in and go, yeah, we did this one this kind of way, and then that was it. Like he was the only time he opened up was when Kevin Kline was with him on the Prairie Home Companion commentary and forced him to talk.
Yeah, the same thing happened in Nashville. There are
Yeah,
long gaps where he just doesn't talk.
yeah.
Mel Brooks did the same thing on Spaceballs. Is that occasionally he would forget that he was commentating and just start watching the movie
Yeah.
or go off. I hate this when they do commentaries and they go off and start talking about something that has nothing to do with the movie anyway. You know, or the only thing they can talk about is where they shot it.
Hmm. We shot this on location on this day and this
I
and
don't
I
care.
remember it was a hot day and we couldn't really quite get what we were looking for. We had to do take after take. And speaking of this movie has a shot in it that holds the Guinness World Record for the most times most takes in a feature film.
And it wasn't by Kubrick?
It wasn't by Kubrick.
Wow.
It was something like one of the scenes in here took I think 130 or 150 takes.
Wow. What scene was that?
I can't recall, but it's in the commentary
Had
that
to be that boxing match.
it's
Oh,
not.
oh, really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
not. I think it's one of the scenes between he and the girl.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Virginia Cheryl didn't do very many interviews, but when she finally did, she said, "I spent most of the time." She said, "I was bored most of the time." She said because I would sit in my trailer for hours and hours and hours and hours just reading books. And she said, and occasionally I would come out to act. And she said of Chaplin, she said he was nice. She said, but he was every bit a control freak,
hmm
and he was over 5 stages of this film. You know, the acting, directing, producing, writing, the music, six parts of this film, and the editing. So I mean, yeah, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it, but I'd love to know what scene that was.
I can't recall off the top of my head now, but my recommendation would be the same as yours, plus um, the Gold Rush and Modern Times. Uh, those are his three best silent films features.
I would also throw in there, yeah, modern times. I would throw in there because if you want to spend an evening with Chaplin, start with the Gold Rush, this, and modern times.
Right. And the kid. The kid is not going to take up much of your time at all.
No, yeah, they don't take up a lot of your time, but it's Chaplin. You're gonna love Chaplin.
It's wonderful. It's always if you've gone a long time without seeing it like I had, you forget how funny the whole film is.
You forget how much he packs into an hour and 27 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You do. You forget just how much of this movie there is. It's a simplified story, but it's not. The journey getting there is just there's so much to it.
The gags are so well played out and long enough that it's not just one laugh and then he moves on to the next thing. It's four,
It's
five,
not a joke.
6 minutes of sustained laughter that if you're not laughing at one part of the scene, you're laughing at something else. It's very segmented, it's very episodic, but it all furthers this plot. It's all everything moves from one end to the next, but it's set up. It's basically set up for bits that work independently. In a like if you just saw them as a clip, they would be hilarious. When you watch it in the movie, they're hilarious.
Right. You
It's
could take the opening sequence of this, and it's a short film all by itself.
right.
You could take the boxing match, and it's a short film all by itself.
hmm
That scene with the nightclub is a short film all by itself. Just this little vignettes that he has that all make into a cohesive film. So I don't want to ruin it by saying any more, but what more do you say about it?
right. What do we have coming up?
Next week is your choice. We're talking about a great film. We're talking about Ernst Lubitsch's wonderful, another commentary, um, wonderful film, To Be or Not to Be, starring Jack Benny and Carol Lombard.
hmm And then
And then after that, we're coming back to my choice, another love story. It's called Midnight Cowboy.
we'll, we'll call it a love story. Uh, and then we're going completely opposite that to commemorate Black History Month with talking about Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year.
not a love story,
No,
but a
no.
movie that calls out for us to love each other.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we have coming up this month. Uh, we thank you very much for listening. You can find all of our back episodes at www.thepodbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can throw a tip into our virtual tip jar at Patreon at pod_bay. You can also find us on Twitter at that same handle at pod_bay. We thank you very much for listening, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
And then you pay the price. The things we do for love. The things we do for love. Communication is the problem to the answer. You've got a number and your hand is on the phone. The weather's turned and all the lines are down. The things we do for love. The things we do for love. Like walking in the rain and the snow when there's nowhere to go. Looking for the answer in her eyes. You think you're gonna break up, then she says she wants to make up. Ooh, you make me love you. Ooh, you gotta wait. Ooh, you have me falling on your like walking in the rain and the snow when there's nowhere to go. When you're feeling like a part of you is dying and you're looking for the answer in her eyes. You think you're gonna break up, then she says she wants to make up. Agree to disagree.